Are Masonic initiates misled? What about the poor Mason himself? Let's go to the best source in the world, Morals and Dogma, page 819. The blue degrees, that's the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, are but the outer court of the portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is, will you note this, intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. No wonder they don't give this book to the lower initiates. That would freak them out, right? Their true explication is reserved for the adepts. The princes of Masonry, the whole body of the royal and sacerdotal art, was hidden so carefully centuries since in the high degrees. There you have it. Only the high degrees know what is going on. This is the horse's mouth. Nobody can argue with that. I've had many Masons be very angry with me, but in the end they've had to admit this is the real McCoy. This is it. I know many, many Masons have become good Christians as a consequence of these lectures. So they are important. There are many, many people that belong to the Masonic fraternity. Many, many people. Masonry, like all the religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages or the elect, and uses false explanations and misrepresentations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve only to be misled. Basically stupid. We're just using you to conceal the truth, which it calls light from them, and to draw them away from it. Truth is not for those who are unworthy or unable to receive it or would pervert it. So Masonry jealously conceals its secrets and intentionally leads conceited interpreters astray. Morals and Dogma, page 104, 105. There you have it. Straight from the horse's mouth.
His name is General Albert Pike. And this guy is one of 2 Masons who has the honor of being buried in the house of the temple in Washington, D.C. You will have a lot of Masons try and tell you, because if you read Albert Pike's material, you will find out that he's an antichrist, that he's a Luciferian, that he mocks Christianity, that he denies the virgin birth, that he denies the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that he calls the early Christian fathers dunces. This is all in Morals and Dogma, the book which is virtually the Bible of the Scottish Rite.
In his book, Morals and Dogma, he states the following in regard to Lucifer. Lucifer is a light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light? Doubt it not. He later asserts the following in relation to Satan. For the initiates, this is not a person, but a force, created for good, by which we may serve for evil. It is the instrument of liberty or free will. They represent this force, which presides over the physical generation, under the mythologic and horned form of the god Pan. Thence came the he-goat of the Sabbath, brother of the ancient serpent, and the light bearer, or phosphor, of which the poets have made the false Lucifer of the legend. Who this Lucifer was, the Lucifer of Freemasonry and the mystery religions, was revealed later by Pike in the following statement in the same volume. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the high degree, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, with Adonai, whose deeds prove his cruelty, perfectly, hatred of man, barbarism, and repulsion of science, with Adonai and his priests, culminating. Yes, Lucifer is God, and unfortunately, Adonai is also God. For the eternal law is that there is no light without shade, no beauty without ugliness, no white without black. For the Absolute can only exist as 2 gods. Darkness being necessary for light, to serve as its foil, as the pedestal is necessary to the state. Thus, the doctrine of Satanism is a heresy, and the true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil.
Well, here it is, Masonic Lodge number 666. This lodge is located in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I had heard about this thing, and we decided to go and check it out. It's very interesting that you can see here on the back of the building, all the windows are closed in. You can't see through any of those windows. Kind of strange. You say, well, that's just maybe the one side. No, actually, on the other side too, it's the same thing. Again, you can see the windows are closed in. Kind of like they're trying to keep people from looking in and seeing what's going on. And of course on the front there you can also see that the windows are closed, and there you can see more detail, the lodge number 666. And then on the other side there weren't any windows, but you see this big emblem here of the Masonic square and compass with the G, and the F and the AM there at the bottom stands for Free and Accepted Masons, and you see there number 666. And very interesting is the fact that this lodge, this particular lodge, is located along highway route number 322. What's the significance there? Well, you have Skull and Bones, the secret society at Yale University, and that's their number, 322. And there you have a picture, of course, of one of the classes, and the man in the gray suit right beside the grandfather clock is George H.W. Bush. George Bush Sr., in other words.
Okay, doing some cleaning today, and lo and behold, as the old saying may go, skeletons in the closet. I actually found a Masonic Bible in the closet, and you can see pretty good. It is a Masonic Freemason Bible, and with it comes a tremendous amount of weird pictures and stuff that goes on. Here is satanic star upside down inside the Bible. Extremely interesting. They go through the records of them, kind of proof. They did talk about the Scottish Rite, the brothers. None of this was ever filled out. I'm not sure who this may have even belonged to, in whether it was in my family or given. This was pretty interesting. This was very interesting. I'm going to do a little research into this. You could see the... Oops, sir. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. See George Washington. He definitely was a Freemason after all. Most people believe he wasn't, but I'm gonna... all these little signs and symbols, I'm really not too sure what they mean yet. I guess I'll obviously do a little reading. Very interesting picture here. This is the interior of Solomon's temple, as seen by the prophet Ezekiel. Now, supposedly, I mean, I know for a fact they don't really know, but very interesting. Classifying this guy here. Try to see if I can get a name for you. I am extremely sorry for the blurriness. You're saying King Solomon was a Freemason, according to this anyway. I'm not saying whether he is or isn't. I just found this. I personally found this to be extremely interesting. And there's your proof of the black and white checkered floor. Now look at this. That's interesting. Let's see if I can get that. Once again, I'm apologizing extremely. It is a... It's not coming in, I'm sorry. I may have to do it manually like this. You see that skull and bones? Right there. Skull and bones. This is a... I guess it's kind of classified as a picture of what it is, and this is classified, and I'll let you see that if I can get it. Progressive steps in Masonry. Y'all guys may have to stick around. This is interesting. Oops, wrong way, fellas. I'm sorry. I am sorry. Like I said, I'm just now getting this. But this is... And who's this fella? This fella here is no other than... I may have to take a look. I'm trying to see myself. Got that guy Pike? See that right there? It's a signature. Interesting. This is, actually it is, that's Albert Pike. Interesting, you'll see it right there. That was a picture of Albert Pike. And this is supposedly the morals, steps of them. Oh wow, the occult science. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, right there. The shadows of the ancient mysteries. This is at a 32nd degree, and I'm assuming you get to your 33 degree masonry. And I'll leave this on for a minute or two for you to be able to read it. I'm going to go back to this 32nd degree, as you well can see. Right there. As you can see, it says occult science. It's no more a gimmick. This is, whoops, sorry, I am questions and answers relating to characters, places, words and phrases used in symbolic masonry. Very interesting. The Order of the Eastern Star. Just trying to get that in a better focus. Freemasonry in America. Very, very interesting. Don't know. It just goes into a regular Bible at this point, it looks like. I'm going to zoom more out as much as I can. Yeah, it goes more into a Bible. It does have a section here. Children's registry and stuff. Goes into the New Testament. It starts. Very artwork, a lot of artwork. But I apologize for any and all of the blurriness. This is all just as of right now. Now you're getting into a lot of picturesque. That's an interesting looking character. Definitely never seen a Bible like this before. And all that information in the front. Oh, there we go. Look familiar? Anybody ever see that in Washington? Looks familiar to me. Seems as though maybe Freemasonry, after all, is devil worshipping. Definitely said occult science, which would not mean Christianity. Oops, sorry. fascinating pictures. And now what is that? Just giving you a massive overview of this Masonic Bible. Extremely interesting. Pass this along.
The Society is shown here in 1993, reenacting the laying of the cornerstone for the United States Capitol on the 200th anniversary of the event.
Know all of you who hear me, we proclaim ourselves free and lawful Masons, true to the laws of our country, professing to revere God and to confer benefits upon mankind.
This is the ceremony in which Senator Strom Thurmond, himself a 33rd degree Mason, took part.
Senator Thurmond, we would like you to join in this.
Since the William Morgan incident in 1826, when Americans uncovered a secret cabal working inside the government, the presence of Masonry in places of power has always sparked debate. But their influence in American government is undeniable.
This is the same Bible upon which Presidents Clinton, Bush, Carter, and George Washington were inaugurated president.
Of America's 43 presidents, at least 15 are confirmed Masons, though some say the number is even greater. In addition to the Capitol, the Freemasons have laid the cornerstone for every major building in Washington, D.C.
The cornerstones of the President's house, known to us as the White House, the Washington Monument, the Smithsonian, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, incidentally by past Grand Master Benjamin Franklin, and Constitution Hall stand out among many others as outstanding examples of cornerstones which have been laid Masonically. The cornerstone of the United States Capitol, however, stands out above all buildings erected in the free world as the seat of government for our people.
This bronze plaque, located inside the U.S. Capitol, marks the spot where the original cornerstone was laid by George Washington, the first American president and a Freemason.
George Washington is probably the most famous Mason in the world.
The George Washington Masonic Memorial is entirely dedicated to the idea of Washington as a Freemason.
Now, we do know that Washington participated in the laying of the cornerstone of the United States Capitol as a Masonic ceremony, and he wore his regalia as a Master Mason. And he laid the cornerstone and performed the ceremony of laying the cornerstone.
Washington's participation in the event was recorded by the newspaper of the time, the Columbian Mirror, which can still be obtained through the Library of Congress.
Laying the cornerstones of buildings which serve mankind is one of the world's most ancient customs.
The cornerstone laying ceremony predates Freemasonry, although its early symbolic purposes as a sacrifice to appease the gods or demons or whatever in prehistorical times, of course, has no application to why Freemasons do it. The corn, wine, and oil that we use for this are also ancient symbols.
Corn is the symbol of plenty, wine the symbol of refreshment, and oil the symbol of joy and gladness.
While Masonry maintains these symbols as a representation of blessing, there are some who believe they hold a more hidden meaning.
With symbols, there are always multiple levels, up to 7 different levels of interpretation with every particular symbol.
Corn is an important symbol in Masonry, and is one found repeatedly in Washington, D.C. But what sort of hidden meaning could apply to corn?
People talk about the Illuminati and the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergs, the secret societies, who they don't like to be called secret societies anymore. They like to be referred to as a society with secrets. And that sounds very dignified.
Yeah.
But I want to know what that secret is.
Absolutely. Now, right on the cover of this DVD, it says American Goddess, and then the subtitle, Lucifer's Torch. Here she's holding up this fiery torch with this giant flame that's going up into the heavens and reaching out to who knows where. Well, we're going to find out where in just a moment. But Mike, most Americans have a fond attachment for the Statue of Liberty. We have all been conditioned to believe that she is a welcomer of the poor, the oppressed, and so forth. And when they see Liberty's torch, the hope springs in their heart. You know, she's a positive image. I want you to just go right into who she is, what her background is. She's got a long history behind her, hasn't she?
If I was a tour guide, taking people to Ellis Island, to the Statue of Liberty, and they were to ask me, what is this thing? What does it represent? I mean, obviously it's symbolic of something. And here's something to understand about the language of symbols. In fact, Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma talked about this, and he said, we as Freemasons, we use symbols. There is always an exoteric meaning, which means this is the one we tell everybody. There is an esoteric meaning, which means it's hidden, it's secret, and we don't tell anybody. So someone going through the Blue Lodge, the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, they're told, well, the rope means this, and the sleeves rolled up means this, and all of this furniture in the lodge means this. But Albert Pike explains, basically, we didn't tell them the whole truth. We hid back something that we can't really reveal to them until a certain time. And so here, the Statue of Liberty basically is this gigantic symbol, and as you mentioned, most of our forefathers came into this country by way of New York City. Those who were fleeing Europe and things like that, they were coming into New York City. They see, the first thing they see is the Statue of Liberty, and they think that is the symbol of America. And we like to think of America as this great Christian nation, and truly, for a while, America was sending the gospel literally to the four corners of the earth. When our founders came over here from Europe, they wanted to settle in New Jerusalem. They wanted a nation that was built upon the fundamental principles of the Scriptures. So they come bearing the Word of God. First it was the Geneva Bible, then the King James Bible. They come bearing the Word of God in their hands, and that's what they had envisioned. But you know as well as I do, Jude talks about certain men crept in unawares. So between the time of the 1600s and the 1700s, when we're going to revolt against England and form this nation, we already are starting to see the certain men creeping in. And instead of a nation that's built upon the principles of God, now we're starting to see things, and it's really coming to light now. Now we're starting to see things built upon a different spirit, and Paul warned about another spirit or another Jesus. So we have another spirit that seems to be dominating over the United States of America. And rather than being God the Father's spirit, there is another spirit that the Scriptures talk about. Revelation chapter 17, her name is Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now, if I were to just come out and say the Statue of Liberty is a statue of Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, you may not quite get that, but let's look at, in
fact, if I may just kind of interrupt for a second, you might even rebel against that. You might, oh, wait a minute, you're impugning the reputation of our beloved Statue of Liberty.
Exactly.
I think most people might take that kind of a turn.
Well, and that is understandable, because that spirit represents a harlot, rebellious spirit, and those who follow her defend her deeply. You remember in the book of Acts, when Paul was standing up against the coppersmiths and the idol makers and everything like that, and they're going to lose their income. Okay, if Christianity spreads, they're going to lose their income.
And by the way, they were making little statues of Diana.
That's exactly right. They were making statues of Diana, and it's interesting that they said, "Whom the whole world worshipeth." Well, that's essentially true, because you go all the way back. You look at it scripturally. We have Diana. She's mentioned in the Book of Acts. You go back to the Old Testament. She's called Ashtaroth. In Egypt, she was called Isis, Asherah, Ishtar. The name Esther, Queen Esther, was named after this goddess spirit, the fertility goddess, Venus, Xingmu in China. And she has all of these names all over the world. The Mayans and the Incans, they all had a fertility goddess that was worshipped, of course, in a fertility fashion. A lot of terrible things happen as a result of that.
Right.
But that's who that spirit represents. And she always represents herself in statues
and
or in idols.
It's interesting. I have to react to what you said about fertility goddess, because we're talking about the regenerative principle here.
Exactly.
The idea of birth, and the idea of the human genome, the idea of fertility in general. All of those goddesses, being goddesses of fertility, would allude to the whole idea of reproduction, which then becomes a sort of a pagan ritual.
Think about what's on the back of the $1 bill. Okay, we have the all-seeing eye, which is not God's eye. Okay, it's the eye of illumination. That's what the torch that Lady Liberty holds in her hand. She holds this torch up high, and it's the torch of Luciferianism, or the Luciferian doctrine. Even there was a show on the History Channel called Decoded, and they were looking into this from a purely secular point of view, and that's what came out was that this torch that she held in her hand represents the Luciferian idea. Lucifer, of course, means light bearer.
Now, I've watched the video, so I'm way ahead of you. You got to watch this video. But I have to interrupt and say that you show that she actually has some symbols on her outer garment. Strange little symbols that are displayed there.
Yeah.
And those symbols have to do with the generative principle, and they're esoteric symbols. What in the world are those doing there?
Well, think of, I was mentioning the $1 bill. At the bottom it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means New World Order. And so that automatically piques anybody who's studied conspiracy theories or anything like that. We know that a New World Order is coming in. Hitler he called his kingdom a new order. He wanted that. It was sort of like a precursor to what we're seeing in the last days. And it's Satan's mockery of, number one, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, which I wholeheartedly believe in, and then number two, the new heaven and the new earth. And so Satan is wanting to have a new world. But the caption above that says Annuit Coeptus, which literally means he favors the birth. And so you're going to have a birth of something to bring in the New World Order. So hence we have the feminine goddess who is always worshipped with fertility practices. This is why God told the Israelites, when you go into Canaan land and you see their images and you start picking up on the religion, don't do it. But all of a sudden now, all throughout Israel, they had a continuing problem with this, because there was the groves built to Asheroth, and there was the images of Baal, and they all had to do with fertility practices. So in these high places, you had these temple prostitutes. You had this worship going on that involved ritual fornication, and that in itself was supposed to bring in this God effect. That's what Dan Brown was talking about in the Da Vinci Code.
Now, as you speak, I'm thinking, I'm sort of applying what you're saying to the average American mind. And the average American mind is not equipped to grasp this and incorporate it into daily reality. Because we all think of, the goddess, that's years ago, that's millennia ago. Mm-hmm. People have quit worshiping goddesses a long time ago. Why does this have anything to do with me? And maybe you could answer that question.
Ecclesiastes, the answers are always in the Bible. Ecclesiastes, you got to read this. Solomon, who was given so much wisdom, who incidentally fell into this thing of fertility practices with his 700 wives, 300 concubines. I mean, he fell into that. But he wrote in Ecclesiastes, he said, that which was, that which shall be, there is no new thing under the sun. God even says he declares the end from the beginning. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be. And so here we have all these things, this idea that if we study, especially according to the Scripture, and I think that we can reasonably look at other ancient texts, like the book of Jasher, which is mentioned in the Scriptures, and other things. We study especially the Scriptures to get an idea of what happened in the past, and how there was idol worship and worshiping statues and these images and icons that were around there and what they represented then. When we see what they represented then we can jump ahead to now we're living, I believe, in the last days, and we're going to see the very, very same things happening, probably on a much grander scale, but they're going to be according to what has already been written in the Scriptures.
And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out of my Spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my Spirit, and they shall prophesy.
This is not one nation under God. It never was. Had it been, it would not have been. No. It would not have been. Constitution would not have been written by Freemasons. They go against God. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve two masters. Praise be to God, Lord Jesus Christ.
Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. No man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon.
Mike, there was a really strange moment as that vote was coming to an end with the House stenographer getting up to the microphones. Let's take a listen to this first of all. Sure.
He will not be mocked. He will not be mocked. Don't touch me. He will not be mocked. The greatest deception here is this is not one nation under God. It never was. Had it been, it would not have been. No. It would not have been. Constitution would not have been written by Freemasons. They go against God. You cannot serve two masters.
Now, she works for the House, right?
Guard Brett, both Steny Hoyer, the leading Democrat, and Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, the Republican who was in the Speaker's chair at that time, because she's a stenographer who works regularly on the floor. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen described her as normally a very gentle soul, and so it really shocked everybody when things are done by the book on the floor of the House, and suddenly there was this outburst at a critical time with this vote tonight.
Yeah, very strange. Mike, thank you. She said, thus spoke the Lord, and this is not the Lord's work, is what she said at the microphones.
In a letter dated 22 January 1870, Mazzini wrote to Pike. Now, Albert Pike is this high Mason who wrote the manual, if you like, of Scottish Freemasonry. He said the following: we must allow all of the federations to continue just as they are. It must appear as things are as they were in the beginning, with their systems, their central authorities, and diverse modes of correspondence between high grades of the same right, organized as they are at present, but we must create a super right, which will remain unknown, to which we will call those Masons of high degree, whom we shall select. With regard to our brothers in Masonry, these men must be pledged to the strictest secrecy, through this supreme right, we will govern all Freemasonry, which will become the one international center, the more powerful because its direction will be unknown. Now, Albert Pike wrote a letter to Mancini, and that was dated August 15, 1871, in which he propagated that there should be a world order, a one order where all nations are under the control of one central organization. And in order to achieve this, they planned, and there are numerous quotes for this, so I've put a number on the screen because some will say, I don't trust this, I don't trust that, I don't trust the other. Here are references down there, there are references up there, there will be references in other slides, so it comes from different sources. He said, and this was, by the way, on display in the British Museum and could be seen there until it was taken away. The First World War, to overthrow the power of the Tsars in Russia, protector of orthodoxy, and bring about an atheistic communistic state. Did that happen? Yes. Now that was written long before this event. Long before this event. This was written in 1871. This war broke out in 1914. The Second World War, that's also written long before the event, to originate between Great Britain and Germany, to strengthen communism as antithesis to the Judeo-Christian culture, and bring about a Zionist state in Israel. Did it achieve this objective? Yes. In fact, after this war, Israel, in its present form, was reinstated under the protection of Britain. And then, interestingly enough, a Third World War, a Middle Eastern war involving Judaism and Islam and spreading internationally. That's fascinating. Is that on the cards, or what do you think? Certainly sounds like we are on track. Well, here's another quote, just in case people don't like that quote. Mancini with Pike developed a plan for 3 world wars so that eventually every nation would be willing to surrender its national sovereignty to a world government. The first war was to end the Tsarist regime in Russia, the second to allow the Soviet Union to control Europe, the Third World War was to be in the Middle East between Muslim and Jews and would result in Armageddon. Interesting. Now, how were they going to do it? Let's read what Albert Pike wrote about these wars and how they were going to be unleashed. He wrote, quote, "We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist," so the destroyer and the atheist, "and we will provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism. Origin of savagery and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the minority of revolutionaries will exterminate these destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, will receive the pure light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer. The destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time." Wow, what a clever plan. So you rub the two systems which you create up against the other. You create atheism as an antithesis to the Judeo-Christian culture. You have these two clash until they rub each other up, and then out of that you will get a new world order where you have a new religion which is far more esoteric and actually honors Satan. Isn't that a rather clever plan? Well, it's very successful. That is why Ordo ab Cao is the verse, if you like, that Freemasonry uses. This is one of their documents, remember, that I photographed in a Masonic lodge.